Welcome back to Tony and Tina's Wedding, Creating a Theater Tribe. I'm Larry.
I'm Gret.
And I'm Concetta.
Many characters in Tony and Tina's Wedding have had to change over time, but none quite as much as the role of Joey.
In the 80s, there weren't many realistic gay characters portrayed, period, but especially none that were fully realized in the way that Joey was.
And as someone who played Tina, Joey was incredibly important to the family dynamic. The Vitale siblings are twin flames who know their mother best and who picked up the pieces after their father died.
Today we get to chat with perhaps the only straight man who was ever cast in the role, Thomas Allen.
Tom created a real human being when most of the world would have played it as a one-off joke.
And he created a legacy of Joeys who hold up their Tinas every step of the way.
Enjoy our conversation with the man who originated Joey Vitale, Tom Allen. Hello there, Tom Allen.
Hello, lovely Larry Pellegrini.
How are you these days?
I'm doing very, very well. How are you?
I'm doing well myself.
Good.
Let's get on to how you began with Tony and Tina's Wedding.
Okay. So this is 41 years ago now. 41 years ago. I went to college, the North Carolina School of the Arts, with Mark Campbell. He was a year ahead of me. And in my class was a guy named Andrew Finney, who has been mentioned several times. So I was doing a show with Finney, and I don't remember anything about it. And Andrew also happened to live in the same building as me. He lived a floor down in one apartment over. So I said, "What are you doing after this?" He said, "Oh, I'm doing this thing." And he described it, and it sounded like something you would come out and do like scenes for, and for like troubled marriages. And then a moderator would come out and go, "How many people think that was the right way to do that? How many people think it was the wrong way to do that?" And I was like, okay, all right, Fanny, whatever, that's good. So we finished that, and I grew up in a little town called Fairfax, Virginia. So I went down to see my parents, and we didn't have cell phones back then. So my mom comes into my room, and she's holding the little Princess phone, and she plugs it into the wall, and she goes, "Someone's calling you from New York." And I was like, okay. And it was Mark Campbell. And I had known Mark a little bit in college. There was only like 20 people in my whole class. It was one of those conservatories where 1,000 people audition, they take 20, and then they slowly drive you insane over the next 40 years. But I knew Mark, and I always thought Mark was really funny. Mark has this great, like sort of Ron Howard, "Hey, how's it going? Look, I've got all this stuff here from the show." But there's a dark side to Mark Campbell, which I always found fascinating. He can just, the character of Barry is like, that's the real Mark Campbell. So I knew him, and he calls me, and I'm like, "Hey man, what's going on?" And he said, "Well, I'm doing this show with Andrew Finney, and we just lost somebody. He's never shown up for rehearsals. Do you want to do it?" And I said, "Well, is this a thing that like where you go and you do like scenes for people who are having trouble?" And he said, "No, where did you get that idea?" I said, "That's what Finney told me." He goes, "For all I know, that's what Finney thinks it is." But he described what it was, improv. I loved improv and all that kind of stuff. And he's like, "Well, would you like to be a part of it?" And because I was at my parents' house, I guess, I remembered I was watching The Tonight Show in like 1976, 1977. And Roger Moore was on it. And the younger people, Roger Moore was a big star in the 70s and 60s. And he played James Bond for a while. And it was Johnny Carson back then. He said, "Do you have any advice for young actors?" And without thinking, Roger Moore said, "Yeah, I have two pieces of advice. If someone offers you a job, take it. If someone offers you two, take the one that pays more." So no one else had offered me a job that week. So I said, yeah, I'll do it. He said, "Great. When you get back to New York, come to rehearsal and we'll kind of talk through it." Okay. So I go to this rehearsal. It's in this photographer studio. I know people have talked about it. And the thing about this photographer studio was it was all white. And it had a big staircase that ran up one side. I never went up there. I don't know what was up there. But you had to take your shoes off when you went in. But I wasn't really enthused about taking my shoes off, to be honest with you, because, in New York in the 80s, odds are those shoes weren't going to be there when you came back. So I said, "Andrew, I don't want to take my shoes off, man." He goes, "Well, put them over there by my shoes and we can keep an eye on them." So my shoes were across the room from me. And I'm watching this. Mark said we're going to do tableaus, which I know other people have mentioned. But what a tableau was you would say, like, this is Mark Campbell, he would say, all right, we're going to do When Grandma Falls Down. Let's get in that tableau. And they would all walk to different parts of the room and hit these like poses. And then he would go, and they'd all start yelling at each other and sort of running around. And then that stopped. And then he said, okay, let's do the tableau when Michael Just comes in. Okay, great. So they all get in these poses again. And then Mark goes, go, and they all start yelling and running around again. That was basically what the first rehearsals were. Nobody had a character. It was all sort of like, everybody was Martin Scorsese extras, you know, just very New York and very big. And I was like, okay, all right. But I started watching them, and I realized there was some really, really interesting work going on between people. You could see them sort of trying things and finding things. Mark Nasser always had Tony. Nancy always had Tina, and everybody else was sort of revolving around them. So I thought, this is interesting, but I don't know what I'm gonna do. Because at that point, I'd only been in New York for maybe a year. And I come from a very quiet family. Very quiet. There's no yelling. There's no culture. It's just repressed people quietly eating dinner. So I was like, I can't compete with these people, with these authentic. I mean, I'd seen New York Italians on TV, and I'd seen them in movies. I'd seen The Godfather, I'd seen Saturday Night Fever, I'd seen Rocky, which takes place in Philly, but same thing. And I was like, there's no way, if we're working this close to the audience, there is no way they're gonna see my inauthenticity, if that's a word, immediately. Like, what am I gonna do? Walk around going, hey, how you doing? Hey, listen to me. Hey, I watched Welcome Back, Kotter. Listen to my accent, you know? So I thought, okay, I gotta do something different, but I didn't know what it was. And after the rehearsal, Nancy goes, go talk to this actress. She's gonna play your mom, it was Sue. And we're sitting outside in this little, I think we'd gotten our shoes back at this point. And we're sitting outside, and I'm like, Susan's great. Susan is just one of the greatest people on the face of the earth. And I'm like, what is this? What is this? And she leans forward and she goes, I don't know. I don't know. She's already in it. She doesn't know what it is. It's okay. I'll figure something out. So the next rehearsal we had, we used to go back and forth between the photographer's loft and the American Legion Hall. Like, sometimes we rehearsed there and sometimes we rehearsed the other place, depending on who was booked or if the old guys would let us in at the Legion Hall. So I was sitting and I'm just trying to figure it out, because I knew I had to be part of the tribe, you know, for the audience to be interested in me. Otherwise, one of two things would happen. They would either not pay any attention to me, or they would like harass me, which is what happened to the nun, which is what happened to the priest. You know, they weren't in the family, so they were like, the wolves could get at them. So I was like, okay, I gotta be in the family, but I can't compete with these people. And Nancy comes over, and I think it was either Nancy or Mark Campbell. It sounds more like Nancy. She said, you know, how's it going? What's going on? What do you think you're going to do? And I said, I don't know what my character is going to be, because I can't figure out how I can be a part of you guys and yet be so different. And she said, well, it's interesting. The guy who was going to play this part, he's just very openly gay. He just doesn't care. And I thought, oh, okay, now that's interesting. You know, that gives me something to do. Because you got to remember, this is 41 years ago. Yeah. And as bad as it is now, it was worse then. Like, people just didn't come out. It was a thing. It was a big thing. So, and again, I only thought this show would run like a couple of days, like all these things did. You know, there wasn't a weekend that didn't go by where you had to go see somebody in some little show, or you were in some little show trying to convince your friends to go. So that is one weekend. This will be interesting. I'll play a gay character. Okay. This will be fun, but how do I fit in? You know, at that point, I'd never played a gay character before, but how do I fit in with these guys? And so they do some more tableaus, and then I'm sitting there, and Nasser comes, this I do remember, Nasser comes over, and he's like, well, what do you think you're gonna do? Because we would do tableaus, and then we'd all sort of break these little breakout groups, and we'd talk, who are you? Who am I? How do I relate to you? Where did we go to school? We'd have all these conversations trying to figure out what we're going to do and who was going to be so we could delineate the characters in the show. So Mark said that when he went to Hofstra, and I think he was in like the football frat or the sports frat or something. I think he played football for Hofstra. And then they had a rival fraternity, which is how he met Joe Corcoran. But this person from the rival fraternity, this was at lunch, person from the rival fraternity came over to Nasser's table and said, we know that someone in your fraternity is gay. And all the like jocks are like, no, shut up, get that boy. And Nasser goes, who is it? And they go, well, it's Bobby. And he said there was a moment of silence at the table, and then everybody went, well, yeah, Bobby's gay, yeah. And I was like, that's it. I gotta be Bobby. I don't remember what the guy's name was. There's a reason why I'm accepted with these people. So I gotta figure out what that is. And part of the into that was Nancy Casero, I guess because she has brothers, she just took to me like immediately. She just loved me very much, and I love her back. She was always very nice to me and made sure that I was in everything. So I was like, okay. I didn't want the character to be a gay joke, you know, because I have a lot of friends, obviously, in the theater who were gay. So I didn't want to be like one of these, in the 60s and 70s, the only gay characters on TV, if they even had them, were these very over-the-top, flamboyant. I don't know anyone who's actually like that. So I was talking to my friend, his name was Tim Bob Van Hooser. God bless him, he's passed. But I've been asking different people, like, what is it like to be gay? Like, you know, what kind of issues do you come up against? Like things that I wouldn't necessarily know, because I've been an actor since I was about 14 years old. So I don't have any concept of homophobia or any of that kind of stuff. It's just, I don't have any problem with it. And Tim Bob said something I'll never forget. He said, the feeling you feel most of the time is shame. And that just broke my heart. It's like, what? Yeah.
That
feel.
was true then. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I thought, okay, I refuse to be a stereotypical, not real gay people. Because the line that Tony and Tina walked, and you could sort of tell it becoming this even back then, was we were a satire of a culture and an event, but we were also a glowing tribute to that culture and that event. Yeah. And it was amazing. I just think it was an amazing coming together of people who just somehow found that line and walked it. And I think Mark and Nancy probably set that tone.
I think so, yes.
Yeah. Because Mark and Nancy, I remember Jack Friss's wedding. I'll get back to my story. Jack Friss's wedding, you know, not a traditional wedding, as Jack would not have it. But at one point they played this song and his wife came in, his bride came in. But it wasn't like, here come the, whatever they normally play. So we didn't know what to do. And everybody in the room looked at Nancy. And Nancy stood up and we all stood up. And then after she got up there, Nancy sat down, we all sat down. I said, that's Tony D's wedding in a nutshell right there. That's just who she is. Mark and Nancy are just natural born leaders. And Larry is too. But you guys already knew that. So I didn't want it to be this gay joke or anything. So I thought, so he's at an event where he can't be out. He's not with his friends. He's not out having drinks. He's around his family. And he's around his mother. But he's also around these people who probably know him more as he really is, the bridal party. They've all done that. So I talked to Susan about it, and Susan, in her genius, said, let's play it like I don't know, or I don't let on that I know. And she would never tell me from day to day which things she had decided to play. So it kept you kind of on edge, you know? It was like, how much do I come out? Do I come out? You know, when we first did it, we only did it like once a year. But when we finally started running, it took me a while to find that line of getting my story told. We were secondary characters in this show. The name of the show was Tony and Tina's Wedding, not Joey Comes Out. not Barry sells some drugs or whatever the plot lines are. So for me, whatever I did had to support that track. So the audience, because if the audience got confused and they just started playing with each other, and then it was just mass hysteria. So I thought, okay. So I will slowly but surely, do I come out? Do I just not come out? What is my challenge? And how do I get people to know this? Because I wore a tuxedo. After a while, I finally got a tuxedo. I was dressed like everybody else. Mark talked about going to every table and doing your work. But for me, it was more like, who am I going to get to know my story? Who am I going to get to say, oh, here's a layer we didn't see before?
Yeah.
There was an article that Joe Corcoran posted on Facebook a few weeks ago, I don't know. And it was, I guess, a publicity piece for a show that's going to be done soon, or was going to be done soon. And they said, Tony and Tina, blah, 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 with a twist of gay. And I was so happy about that. After 41 years, it was like, yeah, that's what I was trying to get, to honor a community, to not make fun of a community, but also not to exclude them by not making fun of them, Because if everybody's being sort of sent up, then if one community isn't being sent up, then that's awkward. That's homophobia in a way in and of itself. So I know this is a really long story, but I kept looking for ways to find it, They brought in a dear friend of mine, Neil Monaco, to play my boyfriend. Was my boyfriend's name Rick in the show? Was that his name, Rick?
Well, Neil's was Rick DeMarco.
He fears no man. He fears no person. He's really funny, and he's really, really good looking. So it kind of gave you an in with the audience. Like they wanted to be near, near Neil. So I think the first kind of break I had, because I struggled with it, I used to sit in the church. We sat in either the first or second row, and I would look up at the girls while they were doing their little speeches in the church, and I would say, I'm going to get my story told to 5 people today. I'm going to get my story told to 7 people today. I'm just going to get out there and make myself work, because I'm really, really ridiculously shy. I have a lot of social anxiety. I mean, you always say, watch out what you wish for, because I was like, just let me get in a show. Okay, Tom, here's your show. You go to a party with strangers every night of your life for the next 5 years, which proves that God has a sense of humor, I guess. But one day, I'm walking along. There used to be a raised dais at Gus's where the bridal party would sit during the opening stuff and the meals. And you could kind of watch it and get an idea of who was who, the audience could. So I was walking around, I was trying to find a table, because I would often look for tables that you could tell didn't really want to be a part of the show. Like they were a little overwhelmed by all this comedy coming at them. So I would try to get them and kind of bring them in, because if I went to see Tony and Tina's wedding and I didn't know what it was about, I would be like, please don't talk to me. Please, God, don't talk to me. So I would kind of work with them. So I would walk along the dais and kind of look for them, and you could always tell because they were like the people very nervously eating or trying to avoid eye contact. And I looked down, and one of the actresses in the show used to wear these red high-heeled shoes. They were like spike heels. And during the show, she would take them off and walk around in her bare feet. That was like one of her bits, which I always found kind of dangerous and gross. But anyway, so I see her shoes sitting there, and I think, I'm going to try these shoes on. So I put them on, and they fit. It was like Cinderella at the ball. They fit. And I thought, I am not going to acknowledge that I'm wearing these shoes. I'm just going to walk around, do my thing, do all my bits, do the papal blessing from the Pope while wearing these shoes. And the audience, for some reason, everybody has their get, in this show. It's like, oh, the priest is this. Oh, the nun is this. Oh, Tony is this. Oh, Tina is this. I didn't really have a get at that point. So I think it helped the audience to go, why is he wearing those? Oh, okay, interesting. And then they would talk to me. They'd go, how's it going, Joe? I'd go, oh, it's going very well. How it's going for you. Or I'd say, oh, me and Rick are fighting. He's so cute, but we're fighting. He's very emotional. Whatever it was, you'd do your work. And I was walking around in those shoes. And I looked across the room. This was the first day. I looked across the room and I saw Sue Varon. She played my mother. I saw her and she was looking at me like this. And I smiled at her and she went, and just walked away. And so she started ignoring them too. We would have these long scenes where we were talking together and she would just not pay any attention to my shoes at all.
My God.
But I used to talk to Susan about every day. We would come home from the show because I would yell at her during the show. And then she would call up and go, "Are you mad at me? Were you really mad at me?" No, we're acting. It's acting. So she called me up that night. She's like, "Tom, the shoes." Like, yeah, how about those? She goes, "Are they staying?" I said, "I think they're staying." But we worked it out. But it was a process to get to that character, staying true to what I wanted to stay true to, keeping him real and not insulting, and yet being able to compete on the Tony and Tina level, which is a pretty high level.
Right.
So your Joey was so refreshing in retrospect he was so right for the period.
Yeah.
What kind of happened later, and not always, but I mean, you very well may have been the only straight person I ever cast in Tina's Wedding, because
Probably.
I think that I would always look for that because, I don't know, I just felt like in some way it was important. One of the problems is as time went on, Joey did become a joke.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so it was always pulling him back because for me, the producers, wherever I went, always wanted him to be this big over the top queen. So, there was always a struggle because I would be like, well, he's supposed to be hiding it from his mother. And,
Yeah.
know a thing or two about being gay.
Part of my voices, Joey, was based on you, actually.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. When I've done something stupid, which was often, you would go, "Tom."
I know that tone.
Yeah.
We've all gotten that tone.
Yeah.
So that's how I talk to Susan, to my mother. I'd be like,
you were never insulting, and you also were really probably the character that underplayed the most.
Yeah.
Which was really nice because that secret, which was so right for the period, could be there. Yeah.
It must be difficult for people playing Joey now because what is the conflict? I guess it's still not as okay to be out, but I think and maybe I'm wrong about this. Is it easier to be out now than it used to be? Maybe not now, I don't know.
Well, Mrs. Vitale still generally plays ignoring it.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, at some point she couldn't play not knowing because it would just make her stupid.
Yeah.
But when we did the show in London, I think that the character and I talked about it together, but we put him in a kilt.
Only in London.
Like the English
Only
version
the
of
UK.
shoes.
No, that would never work here.
So fabulous.
Kilt.
A kilt. And he was fantastic. And his mother, and this woman was great, but she just always played that he was honoring distant relatives.
He's Scottish. Not gay, he's
Scottish.
Scottish.
Like half trans,
That's hilarious.
But coming from an Italian family as well, and also, knowing Juan's family and the way that people did know, but they just didn't talk about it.
Yeah.
And I think that that's still true today.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
You know what I mean? That there's either the mom that totally embraces it, but you did have Aunt Rose who helped you.
Yes.
Kind of not come out, but to be able to be gay around her.
Yeah. Jennifer Heffler was my Aunt Rose, who is, again, one of the greatest people on the face of the earth. The Vitales were tight. It was funny. The Vitales and the Nunzios were very tight. but we didn't really hang out together.
No.
You know? No, it was like, I'm not even, I'm talking about in life. Like, I was much closer. Like I was a little scared of the Nunzios.
Mark Nasser, yes, definitely.
Well, you know, Mark Nasser is one of the kindest people on the face of the earth. He really is. He's a big mushball. He's a sweetheart, but he's a genuine tough guy. You know, he's a tough dude. My favorite Mark Nasser story is we were getting ready to do the pilot, and I'd gotten into town like a couple of days early, and Mark's like, "Hey, come meet me at this bar called Barney's Beanery, which used to be this big Actors. I don't even know it's still there." Oh. So I come in, and Mark, of course, is talking to the bartender because he's friends with everybody in the world. And I'm like, "What's going on, buddy?" He's like, "Well, for the last week, I've been hanging out with this French biker gang." And I'm like, only Mark Nasser could start a sentence like that.
So true.
French biker gang.
And how did you feel? What was the difference between New York and performing in LA?
LA was interesting, was great, because I had become comfortable doing the show. I'd had the shoe incident, you know, I'd had the shoes, which was kind of Joey coming out from like the feet up.
Yeah.
And also in New York, and this led into LA, there used to be this bar across the street from the church, the last church we did it at. And it was called the Boots and Saddle. The Boots and Saddle. It was a gay bar. And I would always say, because me and Neil didn't have anything to do, like we would come out after the ceremony and the bridal party would stand up on the steps and the audience would stand here and they'd be doing their bits, again, getting their stories set up and told. And we didn't really have much to do because we didn't want to steal from that. So I used to say to Neil, we got to find something to do while we're just standing here. This is Dullsville. So one summer afternoon, I looked over at the Boots and Saddle and I'm like, let's go. Going into the Boots and Saddle. You know, Neil is like, let's go, buddy. So we walk across the street, we walk in, and we walk into this bar, and there's like, I don't know, 6 or 7 people sitting at the bar. And we walk in, and one of the guys looks back at us and goes, the bridesmaids are here! The bridesmaids are here! And they brought us over, they bought us beers, they were asking us about the show in character. They would go, so tell us about your sister. You know, they knew all this, they knew the stuff.
I know.
And they were just sort of happy to be included. So then they gave us beer, so we went and leaned in the door of the Boots and Saddle and drank our beer. And I remember watching all the people in the bridal party sort of like look over and go, is Tom Allen at the Boots and Saddle? Is he having a beer at the Boots and Saddle right now? And so I thought, well, that's interesting. So then we get out to LA. In LA, it was a huge space. It was just a gigantic space. But outside of that space was like this open courtyard that was walled in. Neil and I were walking around. I think it was during dinner. We didn't have much to do during dinner. And it was harder in LA because everything was so spread out. And the tables were spread out. You really had to it was like road work. Yeah, I'm going to go over to table 7 to do my thing. And then I'm going to go over to table 13.
It was a big space, yeah.
So Neil and I walked outside. We were just hanging out there. And all of a sudden I said, or maybe he said it to me. I don't want to steal this. We decided to just dance. They were playing, you know, like dinner music. And I said, you know what? Let's just dance out here. Let's not tell anybody. Let's not make a big deal of it. So, you know, we're talking about the Yankee game or something. We're just sort of dancing around. We would switch off on who led. And I thought, this is a really important moment because Joey gets to go to that ceremony, but he doesn't get to have the ceremony, or he didn't then. So I thought, I am going to dance at my sister's wedding with the person I'm in love with right now. And it was such a nice moment. And it was a little bit like the shoe moment in New York, in that people would be talking and eating and they'd look outside and we would just sort of dance by, you know, these big giant windows, and they would go, oh, look at that. You know, it would add a layer without being like, wow, wow.
It was great. And I think that Jack would get thrown out, and I think you could see Jack out those windows too.
He would walk around.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
The best scenes are without a word, right? I mean, just not even saying a word.
You have to have the right venue to be able to have that.
Yeah.
So it was really great.
As great as Gus's was, and Gus, imagine a bunch of 20-year-olds having a space like that. That was sort of our playground. Like we'd all get there early, we'd hang out, we'd sit at the tables, chat with each other. You know, Jay would be in there putting on his makeup or whatever, because the dressing room was about as big as it was a closet. You know, it was literally a closet with some old refrigerators that we hung our costumes in. And then we also hung them, as the cast kept getting bigger, we would hang them all over the pipes and stuff. But then after the show, if it was your birthday, the people would write you a little show, like about you.
Yeah.
And the band would play, and Nasser would get up and play drums, and Jack Frisk would do his Mick Jagger imitation and play the harmonica. And we would be there till like 3 or 4 in the morning. It was amazing. And I remember thinking then, this doesn't happen very often. This is an amazing experience. I should really try to enjoy this as much as I can. Those early days were really kind of magic in terms of what we got to do, I think.
Yeah, I think they were important, not just in all of our lives, but for the longevity of the piece.
Yeah.
You know, it just kind of set everything up so that other people in the future really had a pattern. When I teach, I teach what the original company did.
Right.
Because I don't really think it's fair to teach anything else, because that's where it all began.
Yeah.
Anyway, Gret and Concetta, any questions?
Yeah, Tom, can you tell us the story that when Terry would catch you and making out? Can you tell us that?
Okay.
We hear there was a few setups to, make
Yeah.
a couple of your coworkers crack up.
Well, Elizabeth Herring is a sweetheart. She's such a nice, really, giving, caring person. But when she came into the show, like, me and Nancy must have been having a bad day or something. Because I remember sitting at the table and I was like, okay, Elizabeth's going to be cousin Terry. She's going to be a nun and she's going to be in the family. Let's figure out how she fits in. And Nancy's like, all right, we all hate her. I'm like, what? Like, yeah. She's like a goody two-shoes. She's always like hanging around mom. And we always have to deal with, that's why she's a nun to impress. And I was like, oh, that's a different side of Nancy that I don't necessarily know. So we just played like we just despised her. And at the same time, you had to keep an eye on her because she was always being assaulted.
Right. The
by
poor
these
Terrys.
weird people, I know. But again, the audience sensed she's not one of them.
Right.
We can cull her from the herd. So for some reason, Neil and I decided, like, we would watch. At one point, Elizabeth went back into the dressing room or did something, and then she would walk by the bathroom, and I thought, oh, wait, we can probably, because we're always trying to get her, just to do something, because she would be like, oh, she would like flip out. So I said, let's figure out what to do. And Neil goes, well, let's be in like a compromising situation. In the bathroom. Because a lot of stuff started happening in the bathroom. I guess Larry like cut it after a while, but there was a lot of bathroom action going on.
Yeah, we've been hearing about the bathroom action.
Yeah. Barry would sell drugs. The priest would pass out in there. He would pass out with like his face mushed up against the mirror. So we started trying to find the weirdest, most awkward, like Kama Sutra-like positions.
Oh my
And
gosh.
she's the only person who saw it. The audience never saw it.
So funny.
And then she would run out and tell on us. And but that was like before the show. We would go, "What are we going to do to Elizabeth?"
Oh, poor Elizabeth.
So I'll show the other people this. I cleaned out a storage space a couple of weeks ago, and I found that jacket. That jacket
Nice.
was our original cast Tony and Tina jacket, and then we also had a lighter version, denim.
Oh my goodness, look at that.
And
That
then
one I don't
found-
think I've seen. I think I've seen the other one, but not
There's
that
not
lighter one.
many. There's not many. And then I found, look at this. This is just
Whoa.
Tony and Tina t-shirt
Intelligence.
from 40 years ago. And this one
Wow.
is a show that we also did called the Vicky Shows.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and this has not been out of a box for like 40 years.
Oh my goodness. What does it say
Yeah.
in the back there?
It says artificial intelligence. It's like this
Oh, it
German
does say artificial
expressionist kind of painting. I don't know
There
why.
it
You can't
is.
really read it. Yeah.
Oh, that is so
So,
cool.
yeah.
No, when we
Nice.
came along, there was no Tony and Tina's thing. The band had the Tony and Tina's jackets that I
Oh,
can
did they?
remember, but I don't remember anybody else having anything Tony and Tina.
We had merch in Las Vegas. We still have my hat.
Oh, that's cool.
I had a baseball hat. It says New York and Las Vegas.
Did the character of Joey have little matches or something? I didn't go to the show. I was in Las Vegas. I was walking around, and Joey had something set up outside. Like there was some kind of like little thing.
Oh,
I don't remember what it was, but I wanted to steal it, but I didn't.
I can't remember.
Yeah.
We had a weird entrance because we were sort of in a exterior building that you had to walk outside. So maybe one of the Joeys had something there. You know about Joey having matches, a matchbook or something?
Was
Larry?
he a cigarette smoker? Maybe it was just like his stash.
It might have been. It might not have been matches, but there was something that had the character's name on it. I was like, oh, I didn't know
Oh,
that.
Joey's nuts.
Joey's
man.
nuts. It must have been Joey's
Right.
nuts.
And
Joey's
and
nuts.
Also, he had, I don't know if you did this, but there was somebody had Joey size, like exercise.
Joey's eyes.
Oh my gosh,
Joey
that's
size.
hilarious.
Like, yeah, because at one point everybody wanted to have cards, and so I was like, well, I guess that's okay. And Nancy and I talked about it, and it seemed to be okay. But then, like, people would leave with like 10 different cards. I don't know.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, that's funny.
where this
And then
happened.
he, of course, was also promoting whatever show he and Donna were doing. So maybe one of the characters made up little promotional things to hand out.
Yeah.
Hey, and the other
Yeah.
thing we kind of want to hear about is from the people who went from New York to LA.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I understand some of you had quite a road trip experience. So I
Okay.
wonder if you were part of that
This was-
caravan.
Where were you in?
Yeah. This is a very interesting story. I drove across with Eli Ganeas, he was the original
Oh
giant.
yes.
And he and I were really good buddies. But we didn't have cars, we lived in New York. So my dad was in the car business. So there was always a couple of suspicious cars that had fallen off a truck, in our
Yeah.
yard. So I said to my mom, I need a car. I got to drive across country and do this show. And she's like, all right, well, take this one. So the car they gave me was a 1975 Lincoln Continental.
Yes.
Huge. And
didn't
somewhere
know.
along the way, someone had taken a chainsaw and cut off the roof, and then it replaced it with like glass panels. It was like they used to call them T-tops, but it wasn't like a factory install.
Someone had handmade their T-top.
Yeah. So
Wow.
it was sort of like a convertible, except that you would take these things off and they were really, really heavy, and you would have to put them in the trunk. And they were great, except if you got above 65 miles an hour, they sort of started going ka-dunk, like they were gonna like fly off.
Oh God.
So we had to drive all the way across country with these things off at like 80 miles an hour. So we were kind of like legally deaf by the time we got to LA.
Wow.
So we drive across. Eli is very into like the West and mountains, and I'm very into getting there. So I would like wait till he fell asleep, and I try to get like 100 miles in. So we finally get there. It's like 6 days. We got pulled over twice and searched by the police. Thank
Oh,
God.
boy.
Well, Eli, he doesn't even drink, but I will do anything anybody hands me. But we don't have anything with us, Other cars going across were like, a meth lab going across. There was a lot of chemicals going across, but not us, thank God. So we get to LA, and back then we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have apps. It was just like, here's the address of the place and be there on Tuesday. That was basically how it was. So we figured we'll just keep driving west. Eventually we'll probably hit California. Either that or like Washington, and we'll just make a left and go down. So we get there and we're in LA. And I don't know if you guys know LA, but it's like crazy. If you don't know where you're going, it's just insane.
Yeah.
So we found it was like Sunset, then Hollywood, and then Highland. But there's no sign in front of the hotel. It doesn't say Highland Gardens. So we're driving up and down Highland like, what a freak. And all of a sudden Eli goes, there's Larry. I look over and you're just standing on the street, just kind of looking around. I don't know what you were doing there. Like maybe at a certain time of the day, you just went out and waited for cast members to drive by.
A lot of people were having problems finding it.
Yeah. So we whip it, I whip the giant boat around, and people are honking at us, and we pull up in front of Larry, and the T-tops are off. And again, we've been driving, we're a little bit deaf. And Eli goes, Larry, thank God we found you. And in true Larry Pellegrini fashion, you looked down into the car and you went, "Oh, hello, boys." So if we hadn't seen you, we'd still be driving up and down Highland Boulevard.
That's
looking for
right.
Do I have time for one more story?
Yes.
So you guys have asked other people, when did you know? When did you know it was kind of happening? So we used to do this other show called the Vicky Shows. So we did that. We first did it at this little rehearsal hall, but we got seen there and they invited us to be in this comedy festival at this nightclub. This is back when they had nightclubs, called the Ballroom. So we were kind of like the hit of that thing. And the Ballroom was great because it had other acts that would play around us. So anyway, we found out that we were going to get Stephen Holden to come review us from the New York Times. When you have an opening like that, you paper the house, you have all your friends and family come. So the Vicky Shows were like a subset of the wedding cast. It was a smaller group of the people who were doing the wedding. But for that particular evening, we invited all the wedding people. So it was kind of a little bit of a reunion, and the wedding people were there and the Vicky people were there. And we went to this little bar on 8th Avenue probably, because we'd seen in movies that you wait up and read the reviews, and you always see those 1940s movies and stuff. So we wanted to do that. So we go to this bar, and it's like an Irish bar, and we were throwing darts and just having a great time. And at one point, Jay Heron and James Altuner go out and get the review. Came out late, the late edition. And they bring it in, and we're like, read it, which was pretty ballsy, because if it was a bomb, it would have been pretty awkward. But Jay Heron read it, and of course it was a rave. And they called us the comedy group of the 80s. This is how long ago this was.
Wow.
And I thought in that moment, okay, this is different. And after that, Joe decided to open the show back up for that 6-week run.
Yep.
We got a lot of TV people who came to see us. Because of the Times review, we were able to get the TV people to come and see us. They loved it. And it was that moment where you sort of feel like, in the movies where the train kind of goes, choo, 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 it starts. That was the moment where I thought, okay, this might actually go someplace. And that's a moment I will never forget. That moment sitting in that bar with like all these people that, you just love so much, saying, look, we're making it. We're not just a dumb show in the East Village that you do for a weekend and never do again, like the show I did with Finney that I can't even remember what it was about. That was the moment for me.
Finney won't remember, so don't ask him.
Oh, I got to clear something up very quickly. Finney went to do a movie in China. That's why he couldn't do the show. Like a friend of ours got a big part in some movie that was being shot in China, and he got Finney a little part. That's why he left. So Finney, if you're watching this, I stood up for you.
And also, we want to just ask you who your favorite celebrity was.
I think my favorite celebrity that ever came, one was Tracey Ullman, who was just the nicest person ever.
Environment too.
I remember when she came.
And I guess the other one was the entire cast of Beetlejuice came one day, and they all sat at not Michael Keaton, but like the director and Catherine O'Hara. She was there, and I was standing by her as we were doing the Mexican, what little dance we used to do. You put your right foot in, the hokey pokey. I stood by Catherine O'Hara and did the hokey pokey, and she was sort of giggling like, oh, look at what you're doing.
Yeah, I remember that.
You guys were movers and shakers, man. I don't know how you got those people there, like Kirk Douglas and all these huge like icons.
That was Rick Miramontes.
Rick was amazing. Yeah. It was like being in a band, it was like being in a band that had a hit, like several hits, because all of a sudden, all of us, that road we took together from 1985 to when we all left the LA company, because a lot of us left at the same time. Mm-hmm. I went back to New York, some people stayed. But that ride we all took together, I mean, not many people get to go through that. And I don't think you really understand. I'm not sure we understood what it is, because you're kind of in the middle of it. But we knew like every time something else cool was happening. Oh, this is happening. Oh, we're going to LA. Oh, we're doing a TV show. Oh, how often does that happen? You know,
Right.
not very often. So it was a very cool ride to be on with a bunch of really, really cool people. I will say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so nice to have you speak about all of this because we can all feel it and describe it, but to have people speak about it really is wonderful. And thank you so much, Tom, for taking
Oh
the
yeah,
time.
thank you, Larry. I mean, I think this is so valuable for people who are going to come in and do the show to be able to hear some of these stories and hopefully get that feeling that all of us had, which was this is very important and we don't fuck around about this, you know?
Yeah, it exists. It exists out there. You know, it exists in other companies and both of these ladies, can I say that? Yeah.
Well,
Um,
loosely.
They'll tell you because you know Gret was in Las Vegas and it was a very tight company and that moved from many different venues.
Yeah.
Yeah, that legacy is intact, I think. And it helps that Larry is the connective tissue sort of between all of these companies. You know, he directed us the way that, like he said, you know, the way that the original company did it. And so we all had a deep respect for that.
Yeah.
And the fact that that legacy lives is really unique.
Yeah.
You know, just
Yeah. And you said something a minute ago that I wanted to call you on there. You said I wasn't a member of the cast. You were as much a part of us as anyone else was, if not more. You don't know how often we would be like, we got to talk to Larry. Where's Larry? You know, like I would look around and see where you were. Whenever we were, it's like, okay, there's Larry. I know where he is if I need him. You know, you were a very, imagine 30 alpha funny people doing their thing. And you're the only reason it just didn't spin off into chaos. Not that it didn't occasionally, but you could always be like, somebody said something about the bit graveyard. I don't remember that, but you used to do like a speech. We would have a speech before the show, like this person's out, this person's in. And I would always wait, like we would start bits just out of boredom or whatever. One point we had a bit called the slick bit, which Mark Campbell started, which he would walk across the floor and like, slick here. And then somebody else would walk across, and then it would get bigger, and then there would be like a pratfall, and then someone would like do cartwheels across the floor. And I was just thinking, sooner or later, Larry's gonna cut the slick bit.
It was contagious.
that's
Yeah.
right.
That's-
The hook's
I mean,
coming.
listen,
Yep.
that
The
is the
hook is
stuff that
coming.
and I laughed at that. That I loved that stuff, but
Yeah.
it's like it just can't stay.
No, because you know it's funny, and then it's really funny, and then it's not funny anymore, and then it's kind of funny again. But I have just such a vivid image of you sort of leaning against the door in the dressing room going, oh, and the slick bit is coming. And we were like, no, not the slick bit.
The
But
slick
yeah,
bit
you held
is
it together.
cut.
Ben. You held
I
it
think
together.
there was-
And no one else could have, I guarantee you.
Anyway, Tom, you can't see me, but I'm sending you lots of love.
I love you, Larry,
I love
wherever you
and
are.
I'm in a void in Portugal.
Tony and Tina's Wedding, Creating a Theater Tribe, is a production of Virtual Arts. If you like this episode, please make sure to like, subscribe, and give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And join us over on Instagram to see photos and archival materials related to the episodes. Join us next time for our conversation with set designer Randall Thropp and press agent David Rothenberg.